Putin. Admiral John Kirby, Pentagon press secretary, with me now. Admiral, thank you for being in focus. You know, when you hear former Secretary Pompeo say it, you hear Republicans say it, and others, take the politics out of it, get to the brass tacks here. Why haven't we responded to the massive buildup of troops, an estimated 127,000 that Putin's put on a border with Ukraine? Why haven't we responded before now, or at all?
Well, Harris, I got to tell you, I'm not sure I agree with the idea that we haven't responded. I mean, we have just approved another $200 million of assistance, security assistance to the Ukrainian armed forces. You saw Jen's hit just a little bit ago. They are arriving as we speak, including lethal assistance in the form of Javelin anti-tank missiles. We have put an additional 8,500 troops on heightened alert just yesterday to have to go, perhaps, maybe, haven't been deployed yet, to bolster the NATO response force. We're not ruling off the table any unilateral U.S. troops also inside Europe or even going to Europe to help bolster our allies and reassure them. And not to mention the fact that that we've been very clear with Mr. Putin about the severe economic consequences that he might suffer. So I don't agree that we haven't responded.
All of that, though, doesn't deter him. Like, I hear what you're saying, Admiral, but all of that is in recent days, and maybe there was money spent before. By the way, we have some live pictures of some of that $200 million in aid that Biden has just put into play. Yeah. And we heard about those anti-tank, 300 of them, Javelin missiles that are arriving right now. And I get that. And I also understand that you said on this network yesterday that the 8,500 or so troops going in would be for training specifically. That to Putin, though, he's put 127,000 troops on the border. We know he's perched to go in. It's not deterring him. So what does?
So two things there, Harris. Number one, we don't believe that Mr. Putin has made a final decision. So we still think there's time and space here for diplomacy.
You think he'd tell you first? Did he tell you when he was putting those troops there?
Harris, he has not de-escalated, and I said that yesterday. He obviously continues to add forces, but we don't believe he's made a decision. And then secondly, these NATO response force troops that we're talking about, if it's activated, are not about training. It's about credible combat power for the alliance. And as I said, we haven't ruled out the possibility.
They would fight for what? Because Ukraine is not a NATO member. They would fight for those neighboring NATO countries should they have to put that 40,000 strong force. Is that what you're saying?
If activated, the NATO response force would be deployed on NATO territory, allied territory, to help bolster their defensive capabilities. And it would be credible combat forces.
But then you're on defense. Why not make something happen before he goes in?
And we are doing that, Harris. I mean, we are helping the Ukrainian armed forces better defend themselves. The $200 million that we talked about that the president approved in December, that's on top of the $60 million that he approved months before that. So, and it's not just us, Harris. NATO allies and partners, Lithuania,
Is anybody
Latvia,
spending
Estonia,
as much money as we are?
They are all contributing to helping secure and to helping Ukrainian armed forces defend themselves. They absolutely are. Now, are they doing as much as we are? But probably not. I mean, we are very much committed to this. But that's the point, Harris. We are absolutely committed to helping Ukraine defend itself. But we also have an obligation inside NATO to the Article 5 commitment inside NATO to make sure our allies are ready.
But not Ukraine. So when Americans ask, why are we involved with Ukraine, you would say what?
We are absolutely committed to helping Ukraine defend itself, and that's what this security assistance is all about. And obviously, nobody wants to see another armed conflict on the European continent. Nobody wants to see another invasion and another incursion, which is why we're making it very clear to Mr. Putin that there will be severe consequences if he moves in on another time to attack Ukraine.
I just remind everybody that about a week ago, we were listening to the President of the United States tell us about minor incursions and what he would allow. And the cleanup on aisle 7 has gotten us to the point, Admiral Kirby, with all due respect, to where you're still doing that. And what the world sees is, well, which was the story? A confused president or where we are now? And all of it is dangerous when you talk about taking men and women away from their families to go serve in such a faraway place for a country that people know is not in NATO. I do want to get to this because it's very important. The 8,500 that the Pentagon has standing by, we've talked about a little bit. Now I want to talk about the 15,000 or so Americans that are inside the country of Ukraine. And we heard Ned Price, we heard him talking about this yesterday because he was asked about it. You know, State Department spokesperson was asked, well, is there a comparison between how we left Afghanistan and how we would rescue our people and pull them out of Ukraine? And I first want to get your thoughts on that. Clearly, two different situations, but the apples to apples at the nexus of it are our people on the ground.
Well, so I would say the State Department has been very clear over several weeks here that they want American citizens not to travel to Ukraine and that they should find a way to leave Ukraine now. There have been plenty of advisory notices by the State Department. In fact, just recently, I think you saw over the weekend, they have ordered home some eligible family members of people working in the embassy. We've been nothing but transparent about the hazards that we see to American citizens staying in Ukraine, and that's been very, very clear. This is not the same situation as Afghanistan. And again, I think the State Department has done a commendable job making very clear, making transparent what our concerns are inside Ukraine.
All right, I want to get to this. Republican Congressman Andy Biggs has been tweeting on this subject. Americans are still stranded in Afghanistan, and thanks to Biden, we can't evacuate Americans from Ukraine. When we look at the numbers of people potentially still in Afghanistan, our job is not done there. Can you understand, perhaps, Admiral Kirby, why the American people might be a little skeptical as we go down a road again that has Americans that have to be moved quickly and 8,500 men and women in our U.S. military are perched?
Well, first of all, there should be no reason to try to move people quickly because, again, the State Department has been very clear about the need to avoid travel to Ukraine for American citizens. And back on Afghanistan, look, we absolutely share the concerns of so many Americans and some of these nonprofit and ad hoc groups that are coming together to help us identify Americans and SIV holders, allies, Afghan allies that still want to leave Afghanistan. So you're right, the mission there is not over, Harris, and we are continuing to work inside the State Department task force to help people get out of Afghanistan.
Wow, you touched on something else. So are we still relying on the Taliban?
This isn't about relying on the Taliban. This is about working with these aid groups and helping identify people that need to get out of Afghanistan and getting them out.
So the Taliban are not helping us do that?
They are still getting out of Afghanistan. These people are still getting out. And look, we know we have work to do. And here at the Department of Defense, we know we have a moral obligation to continue to help those people.
But I didn't hear an answer to the question. Are we still working with the Taliban?
This isn't about relying or working with the Taliban.
Well, let me tell you why I asked that, Admiral. Because Ukraine's leadership put out a notice yesterday that it's concerned that Kiev is no more dangerous for American citizens than some of our own crime-ridden, these are their words, crime-ridden cities where Americans live today, that you can leave those Americans there. Now, might there also be a backdrop to that, just potentially, that they know what happens when we pull out? Because look at Afghanistan. Things folded in, that airport shut down. I mean, it became even more of a dangerous, toxic place for the people who lived there. That the stories are horrific of the people who got left behind, who helped us out. So looking across the world, Ukraine, which was watching too, could there be a measure of concern that once the Americans pull out, we'll look like that country does, Afghanistan? Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I mean, nobody's talking at this point of pulling out of Ukraine. They are a partner, and we are absolutely trying to help them defend themselves. But it would be irresponsible, and I think you can understand this, Harris, with the tensions continuing to escalate, for the State Department not to inform Americans that maybe now is not the right time to be inside Ukraine when we don't know exactly how this is going to unfold. It would be absolutely irresponsible not to communicate that, and that's all we're trying to do at this point.
All right, one last one with you. A new analysis by the Atlantic Council shows just how much influence China has gained across the world over the last decade, while America is losing influence. And I bring that up because in the backdrop of all that we see that's going on with Ukraine and Russia and them massing troops, and we didn't do anything ahead of it, but we're trying to do it now, China is taunting U.S. Navy as it's threatening Taiwan. I mean, they're over an area that we may have to respond to. Admiral Kirby.
Yeah, well, so first of all, Harris, I think you got to take some stuff coming out of the Chinese state media with a grain of salt, okay? I mean, I don't think we should be, looking to the Chinese to be completely... You think I'm getting my information
from the Chinese state media?
I don't think we should be looking to the Chinese for a truthful verification of what's going on. We absolutely will fly, sail, and operate where international law dictates, and that's what we're doing. Nothing has changed about our one China policy. Nothing has changed about our position that we don't want to see the status quo across the strait there to be upset by a unilateral action. Nobody wants to see conflict there over Taiwan, and there's no reason that it needs to be that way. But we absolutely have a responsibility to help Taiwan defend itself, and we're going to continue to do that in accordance with the law, the Taiwan Relations Act.
One last question for you, and it's a broader one. It has to do with the president's foreign policy and our military as part of that. How is the relationship with the generals and the President of the United States right now, given what happened that we learned from Capitol Hill hearings, that the generals had given President Biden some things to do strategy? He went a different way with Afghanistan. How is it now?
I'll tell you what, I was in uniform for almost 30 years, and I've been working in the Pentagon for a long, long time. I can tell you that the military leaders here, and the civilians too, but the military leaders, they understand civilian control of the military. They understand that the President of the United States, no matter what party the President is from, is the Commander-in-Chief. They know that their job is to advise the Commander-in-Chief, but it's the Commander-in-Chief's job to make the decision. And once that decision is made, we march out, we execute, and we do it to the best of our ability. And that's what happened in Afghanistan. That's what's happening now. And I know that that's what will happen in the future here at the Pentagon. They take these responsibilities very, very seriously.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Afghanistan was painful. Those 13 who died at the gate.
Look, that
hurt us a lot. So we'll look forward. We will pray for the 8,500 that you're now about to deploy potentially in this situation.
They haven't been deployed yet, Harris. They're
I said
only
about
on
to,
alert.
potentially.
They're only on a heightened alert.
About to, potentially. Admiral Kirby, please come back and focus. We always get to a lot, you and me. Thank you.
Anytime, anytime.